the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Nissen, and today I am lucky enough to have with me Paul Wheelhouse. Paul, why don't you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Well, I am trained as a pastor originally, as a theologian. And so I have written mainly about religion. My first book is titled Global Prayers for All People. And I have an artistic background as well. I actually used a Florida Community College graphic artist student to actually take a photo of my left hand and duplicate it on the right to make the, and I actually created the Global Praying Hands 2009 before I actually finished the manuscript to publish, self-publish this book. And so I actually used the Global Praying Hands for the book cover. And so I actually own the website, globalprayinghands.com. At that time, I had also launched a sister website, globalprayingservants.com, and as well as .org. They were sister sites, and paid some good money to have those websites developed. And unfortunately, they crashed a year later while I was switching to a different host, but that's a different story. But so I've written mainly about in the area of religion. And so I also wrote a book a few years later, 2013, Human Dignity, a Path of Faith in Spirit, and a Charter for the Restoration of Souls, a Spiritual Foundation and Restoration of Souls. I know that's a long title. And then my first book I actually started writing was back in 1994 when I was actually living in Jerusalem, Israel, working on a second master's degree after my Master's of Divinity, and did some archaeology there with the Israel Antiquities Authority. Actually, with the school I was studying that, but we also did some work with the Israel Antiquities Authority. And so I actually took from my second semester there, I actually decreased my number of academic hours to part-time to begin working on this book, which I actually finished 20 years later. So that was 1997. January, I started the book, and I actually finished it in July of 2017. So it took me 20 years to finally finish this book, and it took almost a year to production to get actually self-publishing.
And what is the title of that book?
It is a devotional guidebook to the Holy Land, Journey with Jesus. 2018, self-published by my publishing house called Wheelhouse Publications. My surname is Wheelhouse, no space. But when I created Wheelhouse Publications, there's a space between the wheel and the house, being a house referring to a publishing house. I did that in 2012. So my website for that actually has an ART before the pub, wheelhouseartpub.com, because I thought I'd use the art and publication on the same website. But in the last few months, talking with a couple new web developers, I've learned in recent years, Google frowns on having a site that has more than one purpose. It's all about niches these days. So if you have a website that has even just two different areas of fields, it can actually hurt your ratings. So I'm trying to work with that website. It's still my official publications website, although it also has art on that website as well from one of my relatives primarily, as well as some art I've done since back to 1986. When I was actually drawing a couple of Wheelhouse graphics, logos, when I was doing some artwork then. And I actually did work for an arts company for 3 years in Orlando after college before I actually went to seminary back in the home state I'm from originally in the Midwest. And where I also returned to a state adjacent to that state, 2015 to get a master's degree in library information science from one of the Big Ten universities, and came back to Florida in 2017 when I actually, after doing 2 months of job applications, I took a break to actually work on and finishing this manuscript of this book. And I'm very glad I did that after so many years. So the website, yes.
You sound like you're a very busy person. Tell me about the time you set aside for writing.
Well, I do find that the mornings are the best time. Although I have written many a times to wee hours of the night, late night. I also can be very productive as well. But I remember years ago listening to one of those radio teachers and Bible preachers, and he said that the way he got his book, besides being a president of seminary and also having his radio program, that he did 1 hour a day every morning. And so I have found that's also a good time for me. I have been keeping a thoughts journal since 2014 or 15. It's now a single spaced, approaching around 200 pages. And in there is content for some future books. And one of the books I'm working on is also nonfiction. So you can see I specialize in nonfiction. And so I do find morning as well as late at night sometimes.
Wow. I know writing, we all have our own ways of putting pen to paper or fingers to computer keys, but finding when inspiration strikes is one of the key components to finishing a manuscript. So congratulations on finishing 4 books. That's fantastic. Did you always want to be a writer?
Since my early 20s, probably even in college, I went to a private college in Chicago, and I remember having one of the friends who was an aspiring writer, talking at the dinner table, and he was really into C.S. Lewis, and he was writing his own fiction. He was kind of like almost something off take from the Lord of the Rings and the trilogies and all that. And I figured one day he'd probably become a famous writer. But when I moved to Florida after college, I really then began seeing myself in the future as doing freelance work. I was doing a little bit of freelance artwork at that time in Orlando, and a little bit of drafting as well. My father was a realtor and builder, and so I was doing some renderings from him. And but I really wanted to be a writer, and so I had the opportunity to actually be an occasional columnist for the Jackson County Floridan, Florida, the first church I served as a minister after I finished seminary. And so I did a religion column occasionally. And so that was kind of like the beginning of that kind of a manifestation of that. But I was only there for a year and a half before I moved on. So I've always continued to want to do more writing, not necessarily as a columnist, but do various work. I had a friend in Orlando too in the early 2000s when I moved back to Orlando then, and she was actually a freelance writer who I discovered when I was doing an administrative assistant job, temp in a office, and I see this lady I knew from church, and I didn't even know she was a writer. And I said, "Oh, you're doing right." And but a lot of my writing after that was focusing on the website writing, so which takes good writing. Now, of course, we're in more of the trend is videos. People don't want to see as much text on websites; they want to see videos. But if you're going to be making a video, you still have to write the script. At least it's a good idea to write scripts.
Have an outline at minimum, right?
Yes. Know
where you're going. So do you envision when you sit down to write an ideal audience member?
I do. So I do think globally and think broadly. And so as kind of the theme of the first book, Global Prayers for All People, I have always thought in a very broad audience. And it's more than just the theoretical market and, thinking of, if I sell a million copies and I only get $1 from each book, that's $1 million. Besides that aspect, which obviously, it'd be nice to be a little bit more self-sufficient like that. I am self-employed and I'm actually doing not bad, but it's hard work. Haven't got those type of returns on my books yet. But I do have broad audiences. The fourth book, of course, is a more of a niche audience. It is a Christian devotional for those. It is meant to be a site-based devotional book for those who actually go to Israel. And I tell people right here I live in Gainesville. I talked to a few people who have already been to Israel, And they said, oh, it's too late. I already been in Israel. So, oh, no, you can still get the book. Even though you've already been, now that you've been, you know those places, and you can still have devotions. You can still use the book, but it is actually designed as a site-based devotional. This book has a different audience that I envisioned for the human dignity. On the one hand, it is theoretical. It's an anthropology and a theology kind of synthesized together. And but the niche I saw on this in this book is, especially this kind of second part is the charter for spiritual restoration of souls, is for NGOs and nonprofits around the world who they're dealing with people every day whose dignity has been robbed or stolen from them from bandits, from ISIS and Al-Qaeda that just come in, or Boko Haram and just rob the villages, and so that NGOs can distribute the book to people, and they can be comforted and spiritually receive healing from these bad things that bad people have done to them. So that was kind of like the vision for this book, although it's, of course, any American can read the book. And I mean, even Americans who have been mistreated or, abused, so again, it does have a kind of a global audience, but realistically, of course, many of these books would have to be translated into different languages for those who do speak in different languages.
You self-publish your books. What advice do you have for people if they're looking to self-publish?
Well, I have talked to a few others that did the same thing I did back around 10 years ago, or some years, is use Amazon Create Space. I have Amazon is a great market for books. There is in their terms this ambiguous term within their term about it's called royalty free. And when I discovered that last year when rereading their terms, it kind of threw me for a loop. And I've talked to a couple of lawyers about that, and they have not a clue whether what that actually means either. It almost sounds like Amazon doesn't want to pay royalties to any authors. I imagine if there are hundreds, if not thousands, of authors who are using Amazon.com, and somehow Amazon is getting out of actually paying them royalties, well, I imagine there would be some major class lawsuits about that. And so I think maybe I don't fully understand what that means. I've tried to reach out to Amazon to explain, but not getting adequate answers back on what that means. But back to the point of your question, could you repeat? I'm going off this tangent about Amazon. So your question, remind me. Question.
What advice do you have for people that would like to self-publish?
So now that their Create Space isn't really used anymore, because now it's, Amazon is actually using Kindle direct publishing, but Kindle was really originally just meant for the Kindle device. I'm not really, I don't really have any, I don't have any particular platform I can endorse or recommend at this point. I would say, of course, do read up online. There are definitely some professional writers and bloggers about self-publishing. And so that's what I do recommend is reading the various blogs and to find where your niche might be, and find a method that feels comfortable to them. And if it is electronic based, of course, there's still Kindle direct publishing, of course, and I would also suggest is that person to create their own accounts. Get started with, for example, if you want to use Nook in Barnes & Noble, you can create your small publishing or self-publishing account with Barnes & Noble, and then create your various accounts like you're in the business of self-publishing. Create all these different accounts, and then the more as you go along, you'll get more the hang of it. I mean, it's all on the business side of it.
That is great advice. Thanks so much for sharing all
Sure.
that information. Paul, what's on the horizon for you?
Well, I am. So I mentioned this. I didn't mention the name of the book series yet, but I'm doing a book series, the Book of series. Many different things that follow the word of. For example, principles. We don't hear a lot about principles these days. Principles are very important. My own business has the AUSA in the business. And so it is an American theme. It's contracted type of service. And so I use the American theme. And so I've also written a couple broadsides. It actually dovetails right in this. So I've actually written the 25 Wheelhouse Theses for Making America Great. And let me correct that. It's 20. I keep on thinking 25. 20 Wheelhouse Theses for Making America Great. And back in the first semester of the university, I was in the Master's in Library Information Science program, the fall of 2015. I wrote talk about a real moment of inspiration. I wrote the 5 laws of information in society and wrote it, and then later on created that as a broadside. I had already created the broadside, the 20 Wheelhouse Theses for Making America Great, before I went up to the Midwest from Florida to get in that program. And that first semester, I get that idea for those 5 theses. So I have that made in a broadside as well. Which is kind of now a tangent to your original question. Remind me of your original question.
What's on the horizon?
Okay, so I'm actually doing a broadside series, which are on the broadsides page of my Wheelhouse Art Publications. So I'm going to continue to maintain my business. I'm actually in the process of actually creating a nonprofit organization, AUSA Preservation. My business name has AUSA followed by 3 P's. One of those P's, when I created the business, stands for preservation, with a plan of creating a nonprofit. And so I'm working on this right now of getting a executive board together to be starting on January the 1st or 2nd, just after January the 1st. And so it is getting into some historic preservation work, but primarily 2 archives I'm establishing. I'm establishing an archive for the American people. If I turn my laptop to face the other wall, you see my library behind me, which is primarily my religion book. I also have a small collection of Americana books as well. My archive is on the other wall, which you can't see, and which is I have, of course, in my home. So I'm going to be looking to establish this in a permanent place. And so I primarily did want to go to the library school to become an archivist. And and I at that point, I was not planning on creating my own archives. So that is what my life work. I want to be continuing my business, contracted work, as well as these 2 archives. And they're quite related because the archives will be managed by the AUSA Preservation, which is one of the P's of my business name, AUSA PPP.
All right, that's fantastic.
All the way till I retire, and I don't plan on retiring. I'm just going to keep on working.
Just keep going. That's right. Paul, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, one of my emails is paul@wheelhousearthub.com. The art is AUT, and pub, PUB, stand as abbreviation for publications, not pub as in tavern. And my cell phone number is 407-493-2244. And my other business email is, well, I got a few of them, but the official PAL at AUSAPPP.com. That's PAL, PAL, at AUSAPPP.com. And I got the Gmail counterpart to that, but I think that will probably be enough emails.
All right. Well, Paul, are you
my
ready?
Website, they can contact me directly on the website too. The form, a contact at wheelhouseartpub.com.
All right. That's fantastic. Are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
I guess I'm ready.
Okay. Have you ever played in a treehouse?
Played in a treehouse. I have, as a kid.
As a kid, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Actually, I kind of jumped in the treehouse yesterday to look at the roof. I was contractor work at somebody's house.
Do you have a song that was your favorite in your teenage years?
Yes. Well, a few of John Denver. So in my early teens, it was John Denver. And so Rocky Virginia, his Virginia song, "A Sweet Home." What's that? Sweet. Anyway,
West Virginia, Mountain
what's it?
Mama. It's
Yes,
like that,
yes,
West
yes.
Virginia.
Yeah.
I don't
And
quite
then a
know all
little
the lyrics.
older, there was that one. I wasn't as much into rock, but I think Bruce Springsteen came out with that song "Born in the USA,"
That's
"Born in
right.
America." So yeah,
Born in the USA.
Yeah.
That was a classic. And finally, what is your favorite scent?
my favorite scent, as in smell,
Mhm.
mint. I actually do like the smell of mint. When I make mint tea, it really is or peppermint, spearmint, peppermint. But I think the flowers still have probably the roses. I'd say roses.
Well, Paul Wheelhouse, thank you so much for stopping by.
You're welcome.
You all have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. Paul Wheelhouse finished his first book in 2010 while living in Tallahassee, Global Players for All People. He self-published it. 2 summers later, he finished another self-published book that likely has made world history and spiritual history of Florida, and has started his own publishing company, Wheelhouse Art and Wheelhouse Publications. Discover more about Paul at his website, wheelhouseartpub.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us on the web at floridawriters.net. Hello.